A friend of mine, he was a white guy, and he was a young character actor, so he didn't want to do Stanley. He wanted to do Mitch in the Moonlight Casino scene, in Streetcar. It's when she's talking about her young husband, Alan Gray, and she says, he was a boy, just a boy, when I was a very young girl. When I was 16, I fell in love all at once, much too completely. That one. He asked me to do the scene with him. So we did it. He didn't get it. But I got a phone call. And I was told that they thought that my Blanche was so remarkable, they wanted me to count the audition as their own, as my own, so that they could take me into the studio. That Elia Kazan, Lee Strasberg, and Cheryl Crawford were stunned by it, and they hoped that I would. I'm going to say no way. So here, here I am at 26. This was Fowler Opus 25. Here I am at 26. And I'm sitting in this, first of all, Lee would teach in this enormous room. It was a huge room. And at the back, it was like a theater balcony with pillars, and then the orchestra. This is where the class sat. And Lee would sit over here, and you would do your scene out there and all that huge thing. Anyway, so here I am, green as grass. And there's Jane Fonda. And there's Shelley Winters, and there's
Steve McQueen.
Steve McQueen leaning against a pillar. Cool as he really was cool. I mean, it wasn't a fake. That's what he was. All that, and quiet as a mouse, so that you could hardly even. I don't think anybody was even aware he was there. Taking notes in town to do some Shakespeare on Broadway, and so fascinated by the method. There he is, Sir Laurence Olivier taking notes. That's a regular day at the studio. And I was, the thing that distressed me was I was on tour when Marilyn Monroe did her first scene. She had just come to New York, where Lee was being Svengali, who was going to make Trilby sing, and she was just about to marry Arthur Miller. And everybody was waiting to get into that class to see her first. And I was on tour, but a friend of mine sat next to her, and he said, "Oh, she's so perfect. Even her feet are perfect." Who knew he had a foot fetish? Anyway, it was just amazing, absolutely.
So what did you learn about the craft, about acting from being
What did
there?
I learn? You'd be surprised what I learned. I learned I wanted to have nothing to do with Lee Strasberg as a teacher. I mean, I was thrilled to be there in the studio and listen and watch and whatever and so on, because I know my instrument. And he had a reputation of, and this is fascinating, taking people apart and then putting them back together. That was his reputation. And some people got put back together and become something wonderful, and other people never got it together ever again. And one thing I know about my instrument, because of what I am, because there are so many more gears and things that open up. For instance, if you walk, let me put it this way. If you walk through life and you don't even know the doors that open, so that you walk through, it's one thing that you experience. If you belong to a group of people who have to give their passport and their resume and their this and their every time to get the door to open, there are things that happen inside of you that you don't need sense memory to go back and feel heard about this. You don't need sense, but you have, a whole bunch in that Santa Claus bag that every performer carries on their back. I felt, who was Bush's, that guy who was Dan?
Quayle?
Dan Quayle, yes. He's wealthy, he's male, he's blonde, he's white, he's this and he's that. That can be a tragedy if you're an actor, because it means that it's like exercising and pushing against a table. If you have nothing to push against, you don't develop muscles. Everything's all laid out for him, so he becomes a shallow person. If you have to go through something to get somewhere, if something knocks you on your back and you have to get up. That's my motto. That's my motto throughout my life. Get up. Nobody, when, you know, so anyway, I also knew that he was one of those people who was, yes, I admired them all for having a mission. All those people were the royalty of the theater, and they approached the thing as almost as you approach a religion. But there are also people who use that position and they become a guru, and you are a believer. And he would do a couple of things to me, like pass by me and make a point, not of saying hello, of ignoring that. And I spoke to a guy I knew about it. He said, "Oh, that's Lee doing his number. Don't worry about it. He does that to everybody." But so I never took it personally. But I realized that this is a person who is, these are the people who end up as the head of cults. The cult of this one, the cult, yeah. So there were a whole lot of reasons why I didn't want to go out on that floor and put my instrument at his disposal to take to pieces, because I knew it was not going to help me. So I stayed clear of him. But I love being there, and I'll be a member of Actors Studio to my grave, and there was so much I could learn from what, and you know, one of the things that is distressing to me, Miriam Colon was a Latina actress who was at the studio. I was so impressed with her work when she was tackling Greek this and that, and I thought she was one of the most brilliant actresses that I would see go out there and work. And I realized she recently died, and she would play Latinas in small roles, and she was never able to use that instrument for what it was worth. And that was devastating to me, that she died and she never became who she would have been. She was a riveting actress when she had the material. Anyway, so that's where the studio went.
Amazing.
Yes, and they're very nice. They called me back and wanted me to come back to class, and so I'll be a member of Actors Studio until I die, which is great. I think it's a fabulous place.